July 21 edition of PFTOT, and I'm back in the regular spot just to make sure that everything still works. It's been nearly 5 weeks to the day since I last sat in this chair. In only 4 days, I'll be sitting here. Chris Sims will be sitting in Connecticut, and we will be kicking off the 2-hour program that is PFT Live. That's Monday morning, 7 Eastern on Peacock, 7 o'clock local time, in prime time in the UK and in Ireland on Sky Sports and podcast, yada, yada, everywhere else the show is available. Let's get to some of the news as I managed to go 4 for 4. Did 4 for 4 last week, whiffed. Got caught looking on Friday of last week. There just wasn't enough news to do it. 4 out of 5 last week, trying for 5 for 5 this week. And here we go with the current news in the NFL. It was news, I guess, yesterday when Adam Schefter of ESPN reported that the 49ers have officially given Jimmy Garoppolo permission to seek a trade. It was news until we found out that it was news in March, that John Lynch, the GM of the 49ers, actually told Matt Maiocco of NBC Sports Bay Area that the team had given Jimmy Garoppolo permission to seek a trade. Late March, nearly 4 months ago. So what's changed? Nothing has changed. Nothing at all has changed. And look, I don't want to get myself in any more trouble than I naturally get myself in. I don't want to anger anyone. I don't want any more unfollows on social media. God forbid I may be blocked, probably have been muted. But this is a tangible example of the trade-off that happens when somebody with a 9.6 million follower account on Twitter decides to throw out something meaningless, gratuitous, old news because it operates as trying to pull the ripcord on a lawnmower to get a trade possibility moving at a time when it just isn't. Why do we need to be reminded now that Jimmy Garoppolo has permission to seek a trade? He's had permission to seek a trade. This is an effort to breathe life into a dead body, i.e. Jimmy Garoppolo's trade prospects. Nothing is going on. We know that he's been throwing for the past few weeks. There was a report from NFL media on Tuesday that he'll be fully cleared in the middle of August. Well, now the report is he's been cleared to practice. Okay. Where's the team that's going to trade for him? Who's going to do it? All that we heard in the aftermath of yesterday's old news that Jimmy Garoppolo has permission to seek a trade is that the Browns aren't interested. Now, look, I think the Browns aren't interested for one very important reason. 2, first of all, I don't think the Browns believe they're going to be without Deshaun Watson for the full season. And I think you're only interested in Jimmy Garoppolo if you know you don't have Deshaun Watson for all of 2022. Secondly, I think the Browns are not interested in being in a position where they have to give up more, maybe dramatically more, for Jimmy Garoppolo than they got for Baker Mayfield. What do they get for Baker Mayfield? They're paying him $10.5 million to go away instead of $18.8 million to stay, and they got a 5th-round pick that maybe becomes a 4th-round pick, 2024. That's what they got. Well, if they would, and again, this is a big if they would lose Deshaun Watson for the full season, all of a sudden, 49ers have leverage. All of a sudden, 49ers can say, hey, Cleveland, we want a 2nd-round pick. And Jimmy Garoppolo can say, hey, Cleveland, if I'm going to agree to this trade, I want my $24 million this year fully guaranteed. Or I want this, or I want that. Browns have no leverage if they seem desperate in their pursuit of Jimmy G. So they're just saying, we're out. We don't want him. And look, does that mean that if Garoppolo would want to play for them on a bargain basement deal, or the 49ers would basically give him away, that they would change their mind? You can't rule out anything in this league. You know that anything and everything can and will happen. But I think that this position that the Browns is the Browns are putting out there is driven more by the fact that it would be very embarrassing for the team to give up significantly more to get Jimmy G than what the team got for trading Baker Mayfield. So we'll see what happens. I continue to think he's going to end up with the Texans. I just choose to believe that there's been a slow play by Nick Caserio, the GM of the team, who slow played the Deshaun Watson situation into a great outcome for Houston. He drafted Jimmy G back in 2014. They want us to think they're all in with Davis Mills. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. if this is part of an effort to just play the cards right, keep them close to the vest, wait for the right time to move, this is exactly how it would play out. So Texans are the team that I continue to guess. I don't know, but I guess that's where Jimmy G is going to end up. Arizona Cardinals and Kyler Murray continue to work toward a long-term deal. We'll see whether or not they can get one done by next Tuesday. If they don't, we'll see whether or not he reports for camp. And if he does report for camp without a long-term deal, is he a hold-in like T.J. Watt last year? No practice, no anything other than meetings and film study and playbook study, but nothing on the field, no helmet on his head until he gets his deal. That's to be determined. An important factor to keep in mind, though, and this applies for now to Kyler Murray and to Lamar Jackson, the Ravens quarterback, and also applies peeking forward. And before you know it, we're going to be there. Justin Herbert of the Chargers, Joe Burrow of the Bengals. After the 2022 regular season ends, the moment it finishes, those two players are eligible for second contracts. So, the Deshaun Watson precedent. 5 years, $230 million, fully guaranteed from the Cleveland Browns. Fully guaranteed for 5 years. That's a new frontier that was crossed by the Browns. They got a lot of criticism for it externally and internally. And it was surprising that people like Steve Bisciotti, owner of the Ravens, willing to say publicly what a strange deal this is. And it affects the Ravens because Lamar Jackson could say, I want the Deshaun Watson deal. Kyler Murray could say, I want the Deshaun Watson deal. And, you know, Murray was trying to get a deal done with the Cardinals back in February before some of these other deals that have changed the landscape, whether it's Derek Carr joining the $40 million per year club, Aaron Rodgers' new contract in Green Bay, the Deshaun Watson deal, other things that have driven the market higher and higher. One of the realities for Murray, Jackson, Herbert, Burrow is this. If they're going to push for 5 years fully guaranteed, can the owners of their teams afford to write the check that would be required to put a gigantic amount of money in escrow under the NFL's ridiculously outdated funding rule? We've talked about the funding rule from time to time. It's the kind of thing that causes people to glaze over, but it's very simple, very simple. Years ago, the NFL Players Association, in an effort to protect players against teams that may become insolvent, that they can't pay their bills, can't pay their players, they required that guaranteed money into the future, a certain amount of it, would be put in escrow so it would be there, so that the guarantee would be backed up by cash on hand in an account, good to go no matter what happens with the team. Well, today, nobody's insolvent. Everybody's got the money. They're going to pay their bills year in and year out. The gigantic checks that the teams get just from their TV revenue is enough to ensure that they're going to be able to pay their players. However, you may have some teams out there that can't write the enormous check. And for the Browns, the way that it worked, we wrote about this before, and let me refresh my memory here. $230 million fully guaranteed over 5 years. By next March, they have to deposit $170 million into an escrow account. Can every owner do that? Can Michael Bidwell, the Cardinals owner, write a check for $170 million to put money into escrow for Kyler Murray? Can Mike Brown, the Bengals owner, do that for Joe Burrow? Will the Spanos family do it? Can they do it for Justin Herbert? Other teams may enter that conversation at some point. You know, the Buccaneers, they never pay out signing bonuses in the offseason. They defer to when the cash flow is going to come from the TV money and the ticket sales. Can they, if they have a young franchise quarterback at some point that they give a big contract to, can they put that money into escrow? This is going to be a fascinating few months because Deshaun Watson's deal, 5 years fully guaranteed, is either going to become an aberration or it's going to become a trend. And it comes down to, for now, what happens with Murray and Jackson. And it may just be that for some teams, the agent realizes they can't do it. So I'll yield on that point, but I'll get something else instead. And hey, any agents out there thinking about getting something else instead? If the team doesn't have the money to put the cash that is needed to fully fund a 5-year guaranteed contract into escrow, get the percentage of the salary cap. Get that as your protection against the deal becoming obsolete. Trade that for full guarantee. Because the bottom line is Deshaun Watson leveraged a situation where the Browns were desperate to get him into a contract that crossed into a new frontier. Even if other owners can't follow along because they don't have the cash to put that kind of money into escrow, you still use what Watson did to try to squeeze something more than the standard formula for negotiating quarterback contracts. That's something interesting to keep an eye on now and beyond the completion of the 2022 season. Raiders quarterback Derek Carr. He's already been influenced by former Patriots offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels, because it used to be Tom Brady in New England saying nobody believes in us. I remember the year that they beat the Chargers in the divisional round, and they're talking to Tom Brady after the game, and he said no one believes in us. It's like, Tom, everybody believes in you. What the hell are you talking about? Derek Carr, Raiders quarterback, says nobody believes in us. And I wouldn't say nobody. I know Rich Eisen has been banging the Raiders drum repeatedly. The problem is they're in a division with the Chiefs, the Chargers, and the Broncos. And the Broncos have Russell Wilson. The Chargers have Justin Herbert. The Chiefs are the Chiefs. I mean, the Raiders could be a division winner in most of the other 7 divisions, and they could end up in 4th place in the AFC West. It's not a question of do we believe in the Raiders. The question is, how do these games shake out? There's going to be some great games in that division this year. Every time AFC West teams play, must-see TV, because how those games shake out go a long way toward determining who wins the division and who has a good enough record to get wild card 1, 2, or 3. And hey, there's a chance one of these years it could happen. All 4 teams in a division can make the playoffs with 3 wild card spots available in a given conference. But those games where the teams in the same division play each other, that could pull the records down enough that there's going to be a second-place team from one of the other 3 divisions with a better record, and even a really good 4th-place team in the AFC West, for example, can't otherwise get in. That could happen to the Raiders. They could be a better team this year than last year, better than the team that made it to the postseason last year and not get in. So it's not about the Raiders as much as it's about their circumstance. Could they be very good this year? I like what they've done this offseason. I think their offense could be scary, and they're going to need to score a lot of points because the Chiefs are going to score a lot of points, the Chargers are going to score a lot of points, and the Broncos are likely going to score a lot of points with Russell Wilson. So we may have some very high-scoring, exciting games in the AFC West. But this isn't about whether or not anyone believes in the Raiders or not. This is the ultimate wait and see. I don't know who to believe in the AFC West, and I'm not 100% sold on the Chiefs in comparison to the other 3 teams. The Chiefs could be on the outside looking in by the time it's all said and done. Here's a concept that I've been fascinated by in recent weeks. I remember when I first heard about Live Golf. I didn't really know what the capital LIV was. I'm thinking Super Bowl 54, Chiefs over the 49ers. Like, what the hell is this? And then you start to learn a little bit about it and how they're coming in and they're poaching some of the best golfers, and the PGA Tour reacted in a very negative and hostile way. And, oh, by the way, the Department of Justice is investigating the PGA Tour now for anti-competitive practices in potential violation of the antitrust laws. That's how aggressively the PGA reacted to this threat that came out of nowhere. And now they're talking about poaching Charles Barkley from inside the NBA to be a commentator for Live Golf. And this all flows from what's known as the Public Investment Fund, $620 billion. It is a Saudi-owned wealth fund that has amassed $620 billion. Basically, venture capital where you got the money to fund any damn venture you want. $620 billion. That is obscene. So, what do? Well, you target the PGA. And look, as sports leagues go, it doesn't get any cheaper than trying to start a golf league. You don't need a lot of equipment. You don't need a lot of players. You don't need a lot of coaches. You don't need a front office staff. The individual players are the team. And I know they have like a team concept, and I don't know enough about how Live Golf is going to work, but I know that it has rattled the PGA Tour to its very foundation. And I have been asking myself this very simple question. Is golf the beginning or the end for what the Public Investment Fund with $620 billion plans to do? If it's the end, then all the other major American sports can just sit and watch the PGA Tour possibly go up in flames. But if it's at the beginning, at what point does the Public Investment Fund with its $620 billion and growing, presumably, decide to try to set up a competitor for NBA, MLB, NHL, or the biggest bully on the American sports block, the NFL? The WFL back in the 70s tried to go head-to-head with the NFL, poached guys like Larry Zonka, big names, offered them a bunch of money. Didn't work. Didn't have the money to make it work. USFL showed up in the early 80s. Got some talent that otherwise would have gone to the NFL. Weakened the NFL's overall talent pool for spring football. Then decided to move to the fall, sued the NFL for allegations of antitrust violations, and won. The only problem is they didn't prove damages, so they won a single dollar. But they proved that the NFL reacted to the threat posed by the USFL by engaging in illegal practices under the antitrust laws. Well, what do you think the NFL is going to do if all of a sudden the Public Investment Fund with its $620 billion decides to have a football league that plays in football season, not spring? I'm telling you, all due respect to the USFL and the XFL, it's hard to get people to give a crap about football in the spring. It just is. You can talk yourself into it. Networks that televise the games and owners of these leagues. But for the average football fan, when it's not football season, you don't care about football. I know I don't. And it's not like I get caught up in the other sports. I care about the NFL offseason in the NFL offseason because there's so much that happens. But you start dropping professional football Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Friday night, Saturday, in competition with college football, which as these planets realign, there may be fewer college games that anyone really gives a crap about as you have top-tier conferences and then lower tiers. It may just be that only anyone cares about, the only conferences, let me try that again, the only conferences anyone cares about will be the SEC and the Big Ten. That creates room if there's some alternative professional league. And it's all potentially driven by the legalization of gambling. People want things on which to gamble. So would the Public Investment Fund with $620 billion and counting gamble on creating a true competitor to the NFL? And the biggest weakness for the league is this: the rookie wage scale. The thing that was put in place back in 2011 to hold down the pay that is given to the incoming players. Congratulations, it worked. But you know what it's done? It's created a flaw that could be exploited by a competitor that says, hey, we'll pay twice, 3 times, 4 times whatever the NFL is paying on this rookie wage scale, which is non-negotiable. We will do it. The rookie wage scale would evaporate quickly if that kind of a threat shows up for the NFL. And the NFL would try all sorts of other things. And my only point is this: I don't know if it's going to happen. I don't know if it's going to work. I'm not rooting for it. I love a good story. And man, a little chaos goes a long way toward creating a good story. I just think that we're all conditioned to the idea that the NFL is never going to face a challenger. When you consider the American appetite for pro football, the fact that legalized gambling will create a greater desire and interest in more forms of football, in more football games on which to bet, especially during football season. There's an opening there. And if the folks who are pursuing relevance for Live Golf decide that they're going to turn their attention some point to football, and if they can attract some of the top college talent, and if they can maybe pilfer a player whose contract has expired, but he's been slapped with the franchise tag. He's not under contract with an NFL team, but his rights are restricted as to who else he can play for. He could jump to this other professional football league. It's just something that I think the NFL would be wise to be thinking about, be very wise to have a plan ready to go, a contingency plan to protect itself, maybe even steps to put in place now to protect itself against that threat. And also, be careful, tread lightly, because it's very easy to engage in the kind of practice, the stuff the NFL thinks it's entitled to do. Plenty of the things the NFL does all the time without even thinking about it, I would assume, could potentially become antitrust violations if the NFL is facing a real in-season competitor. And I'm just fascinated by where this can go. So I'm going to pay attention to what Live Golf does. And I'm going to pay attention to whether or not they have other aspirations. And if it works, if Live Golf works, why not give it a shot? $620 billion. There's a lot of stuff that they could do in the sports world if they choose to go all in and compete in an era where people are looking for things on which to wager. All right, let's answer some questions. PFT PM Posse, I see what you're doing here. With the amount of content you get from doing these, plus all the stimulating questions you get, will you continue doing the occasional old-school style PFT PM? We're still trying to figure out what we're going to do about PFT PM going forward. PFT Live, 2 hours in the morning, fine. It's challenging, to say the least, every day to shut down at 9 a.m. Eastern and to know that at 5 p.m. Eastern I got to be back on for an hour. There may be better ways to utilize that time. Maybe we will do PFT OT as needed based upon the developments of a given day in lieu of jumping in and doing PFT PM on a consistent basis. And it's kind of those, you know it when you see it. Like on a day when a coach gets fired in the middle of the afternoon. And I remember there was a day on PFT PM a couple of years ago. Bill O'Brien gets fired on a Monday minutes before we go on air for PFT PM. That gave us something to talk about. Some days, there really isn't much to talk about that's happened from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Again, you know it when you see it. And that may be the alternative. So it may, I don't know. We're trying to figure it out. It may just be me, as needed, 1, 2, 3 times a week in the afternoon based upon the developments of a given day. We'll see how it plays out. Neil watches PFT. How long will it take to get you back into the swing of the PFT Live schedule? Is it like riding a bike? It is. And it's good that we're doing PFT OT from the old position here today. It won't be as jarring on Monday when I show up at about 90 seconds or so to air and sit down and see Chris, and he gives me the finger, and I give him the finger, and off we go. Yeah, it's just going to be off we go. And it'll be exciting that first day. Those 2 hours will fly by because I missed it. I missed it the first Monday. I keep getting, and I appreciate it. I'm not complaining. I appreciate getting flooded with emails from all the people saying, when are you coming back? When are you coming back? And I don't know how many times I have to say July 25, July 25, July 25. But I appreciate it. I appreciate the interest in the program. And 5 weeks is too long to be off. We're going to try to do something about that for next year. Trust me on that. 5 weeks, if I have anything to say about it, it's not happening next year. 5 weeks is too long to shut down for the sport that never sleeps. I just got a boo from the control room. Sorry, but that's just the way it is. The audience demands more content. PFT PM Posse. Why did the Chiefs trade for Orlando Brown and not give him a long-term deal? Well, they tried. They tried to give him a long-term deal. The question is, why didn't he take the long-term deal? And we've said this before. The standard protocol for calculating a long-term offer based upon a franchise tag is you take this year's salary, you multiply it by 1.2, 20% raise for next year, slap it together, fully guarantee it, and then work out the other terms. And that should usually turn a franchise tag into a long-term deal. I don't know enough about the nooks and crannies of what the Chiefs offered Orlando Brown, but ultimately he wasn't willing to trade his opportunity to go year to year, this year, next year, and then free agency after the 2023 season. He wasn't willing to trade that for whatever the Chiefs were willing to offer. That's how Dak Prescott got his gigantic contract last year. He was 1 year away from the Kirk Cousins, I'm walking out the door. So what Cowboys do you have to give me, Dak Prescott, to get me to trade in my opportunity to make, it was like $37 million for 1 year and then walk away in free agency? What are you going to give me to get me to give that up. And he leveraged that into a great deal, an awesome deal. 4 years, $160 million, and they're going to be back at the table sooner rather than later with Dak Prescott, the way that deal is structured. So unless – that's where the pendulum swings to the player. Look, the franchise tag is bad for players because it keeps them off of the open market. However, the player, once the tag is applied, once the team initiates that process, that's when the player can say, hey, all right, fine, let's do this. I got 2 years before I can become an unrestricted free agent because you're not going to tag me a third time. So I'm not giving up my year-to-year rights unless you make it worth my while. And the Chiefs, in the assessment of Orlando Brown, did not make it worth his while. Neil watches PFT. Texans training camp opens Friday, July 29. Do you think a Jimmy G deal happens before then? I still think he's going to end up with the Texans. I don't think it happens by then, but that's just my guess. Is he going to end up there? Neil watches PFT. Do Madden ratings matter at all? Here's how they matter. They matter because players get motivated by all sorts of things, internally and externally. And a lot of players play Madden. And players are always looking for some sign of disrespect. And there's nothing more disrespectful than ending up well below your peers in the Madden ratings when you believe you are better than how you've been rated. Chase Claypool, best example. He recently said he knows he's a top 3 receiver in the NFL. He got a 78 for Madden. He's way, 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 way down the list. He's behind some guys that he's clearly better than. So whatever it takes to supply that extra kick, to do the stuff that we don't see, watching your diet, avoiding the ice cream, getting up and getting your ass out of bed and getting a workout in on a day when you just don't feel like it. I'll do it tomorrow. Or when you're in the middle of the workout, not pushing yourself to the limit. I'll push myself to the limit tomorrow. Those are the tiny little building blocks that lead to long-term success. So that's where the motivation comes into play. It's not, I'm going to try harder when I'm playing. No, it's I'm going to work harder and I'm going to do everything I need to do and I'm going to be fully committed to all the stuff behind the scenes, the drudgery, the monotony. I'm going to kick ass on all the stuff I'd rather not do in the hopes of leading to an end result where I end up performing a lot better than otherwise would. That's why it's important, and that's why we pay attention. Now, we've only written one item about it this year, about the receivers. I've seen other ratings come out, and like T.J. Watt not being a 99 when Myles Garrett is. But it hasn't risen to the level where I've decided to do anything about it. Mainly, we're looking for reactions from players at this point to their ratings. Because, again, that's the manifestation of what I'm talking about here. That extra kick, that extra thing that is going to drive a player to not take it easy, to be fully driven, fully motivated, fully engaged in everything he needs to do to be the best he can be. Oh, let's see what else we have here. Here's a tweet that is pasted from March 20. Derek Carr said, since some of y'all are sensitive, I will remind you that I only want people who encourage, speak life into me, and uplift me to have a voice in my life. So if you're blocked, you probably acted like a clown for clout. I still love you all, but I don't have time for your negativity. Somebody responded saying, incoming Florio article, and Derek Carr replied by saying, ha ha ha, facts. I love him too, though. He still has me blocked. And I don't know what I guess I do know what I've ever said about Derek Carr. Look, there's different ways that you can cover this sport or any sport or cover anything. I love the NFL. I love pro football. I have since I was a little kid. I wouldn't be giving my life to it the way that I have every waking moment, even during the 5-week vacation. I'm treading very close to the line here, a line that I don't want to cross. I don't like it when people tell me how busy they are. The work product speaks for itself. That said, I love the NFL. I love pro football. But I also don't like bullshit. And one of the skills I've developed over the years is the ability to spot and the willingness to call out the bullshit that permeates this sport. And there's plenty of it. So some people don't like it when their BS gets called out. And that's okay. I can live with that. Trust me, I've been doing this for 21 years. I can live with people being upset with me. I can live with people blocking me or unfollowing me on Twitter. That is not how I measure my own personal satisfaction with what I've been able to do and what I plan to keep doing. Let's see what else we have here. On that point, Austrian Panther, interesting question. Long-term successful businesses innovate and change constantly. What changes can we expect from PFT next season? I continue to follow the basic guiding light of I talk about and write about the things that I would be interested in as a fan. And I think what happens sometimes is businesses outsmart themselves by feeling like they need to do something more or something different than just serve their customers. And I try by constantly keeping that fan in me engaged with the game. I try to spot things that I am subjectively interested in, and I write about those things, trusting that the people out there who are consuming the content, whether it's in written form or video form, will respond and be interested in it as well. There are too many people in the media who try to force feed to the audience things they think the audience should be interested in. I'd rather focus on the things that I believe the audience is interested in. And that doesn't mean clickbait. And there's so much clickbait crap out there now, which is obvious, just click harvest lists, and I don't want to name names or go down that, but it's exhausting at times to sift through the actual news versus the made-up crap that is just there to lure someone in. They click on it and then they say, oh, this is nothing, and they click out, but the click counted. Anyway, my point is we constantly are driven by giving the audience what we think the audience is truly interested in, and that process is a daily, constant, ongoing thing. So to the extent that we innovate and change, I mean, there isn't much more we can do. You see a lot more video content on the site than you used to see. Would I like to have our own app? I would. Be candid about that. Maybe we will one of these days. Maybe there's going to be an occasion coming up in the not-too-distant future where there's all sorts of things that we can ask for and try to get in order to improve the total experience. We'll see how that plays out. Let's see what else we have here. There was one I saw earlier. Here it is. I like this one. Wait. No, it's not that one. Here we go. Hang on. Here it is. From Marco. How can the NFL say they investigated the Watson situation and present 4 or 5 cases when a publication like the New York Times found 66? When the Texans had to settle with 30 women all related to the Watson situation and 10 criminal cases the police detective believed he was guilty of. And this is one of the big flaws in the NFL's effort to create its own justice system. Now, we know that the NFL spoke ultimately to 12 of the women with accusations against Deshaun Watson. There were 24 lawsuits that were filed against him. The Texans settlement, 30, suggests that there are 6 others out there that either will sue Deshaun Watson or, we won't know this if it happened, settled pre-suit any claims with Deshaun Watson. That's possible as well. But we know there's 30. We know that 24 sued. The NFL spoke to 12. And at the end of the day, the NFL presented 4 accusers at the hearing. Now, the 5th, I'm told, was based upon a media report. That's not evidence. You try to go to court by, in lieu of calling a witness, handing the judge a newspaper and saying, read the article above the fold, that's not evidence. No matter how well the article is written, no matter how properly sourced and vetted the story is, that is not evidence in a judicial or quasi-judicial proceeding, which this clearly is. So, the NFL had 4 accusers. The NFL had a 5th that they tried to jam in through a media report. That was disregarded, that's my understanding, by Judge Robinson. So you got 4. So how do you get from 24 to 4? Here's the problem. I knew I'd eventually get back around to the point. The NFL has no subpoena power. We've talked a lot about subpoenas recently as it relates to Dan Snyder and his yacht. The NFL doesn't have the power to issue a subpoena to anyone who doesn't work for the league. The NFL can't force anyone who isn't employed by one of the teams or the league office to show up and cooperate. Ezekiel Elliott, 6 years ago. One of the reasons he got suspended 6 games, even though he was never arrested, charged, or sued, is that the ex-girlfriend who made the allegations against him was willing to continuously speak to the NFL. I think there were 6 interviews at the end of the day between the NFL and the individual who made the accusation. She didn't have to talk to the NFL. She chose to. So, 24. How did we get down to 12? It's entirely possible. And the NFL is not going to take out a billboard to tell this to the world because they don't want to expose the biggest flaw in their effort to engage in this rough justice that they try to craft as a PR tool. It could be that 12 of them said we're not cooperating. And it could be that 8 of the 12 that did talk to the NFL said we're not showing up for the hearing. We don't like the questions asked us. Remember, there was a report, it wasn't a report, it was quotes from Tony Busby a year or so ago, complaining about, on behalf of the women who were interviewed, the way that they were treated, the questions they were asked. They didn't think they were sufficiently respected. So you just tap out. I'll get my justice in court. I'm not engaging in your kangaroo court. I'm not required to. You can't make me. It doesn't affect my rights. So that's the problem here. So, look, the appearance that I think it creates is the NFL ultimately believed that there were only 4 valid cases. It's entirely possible that the NFL wanted to put all 24 in front of Judge Robinson, but 20 of them said, go to hell. We're not doing it. And if they say that, there's nothing the NFL can do to make them. Again, that is the biggest problem when it comes to the NFL's power or lack thereof to properly investigate and prosecute players who are accused of off-duty misconduct. Let's go ahead and stop it there. If I didn't get to your question today, resubmit it for tomorrow. That'll give me reason to go 5 for 5 in the 5th and final week of the PFT Live hiatus. The final 5-week hiatus, if I can help it, that PFT Live will ever have. I plan to come back with one more PFT OT, and then on Monday, we'll be back with PFT Live. Sims will be involved. I'll be here. We'll be everywhere that the show goes, and before you know it, we'll be up and running, and we'll be with you continuously every day, no days off, except when I have an impending intestinal requirement 5 minutes into a show. Other than that, no days off, or other than like whenever the holidays land and we take a day off or two. But other than that, no days off until the next hiatus next year. Thanks as always for some of your time. Check us out around the clock at ProFootballTalk.com. We will see you back here hopefully again tomorrow.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.